Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I'm Naila Shoja and these are the headlines. The United States and Pakistan have called for a negotiated political settlement and reduction of violence in Afghanistan. Pakistan's National Security Advisor MOEED YUSUF met his American counterpart Jake Sullivan in Washington. In a tweet, Sullivan said they consulted on regional connectivity and other areas of cooperation. Meanwhile, YUSUF said the two sides agreed to sustain the momentum in bilateral ties. Beijing has warned the United Kingdom not to carry out any improper acts as its carrier strike group enters the South China Sea. State-linked media says the People's Liberation Army Navy is at a high state of combat readiness. The carrier group, led by the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth, is en route to Japan. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli troops have killed a Palestinian man in clashes that erupted during the funeral of a 12-year-old Palestinian boy shot dead a day earlier. The Palestinian Health Ministry said 20-year-old Shaukat Awad was hit by the Israeli gunfire. It said another 12 protesters were wounded after Israeli troops opened fire. Brazil has reported more than 1,300 coronavirus-related deaths for a third day in a row. The Latin American country also recorded over 42,000 new cases in the past 24 hours. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 86 more lives, at the highest daily deaths since the 2nd of June. Meanwhile, more than 4,500 people have tested positive overnight. Globally, there are 4.1 million fatalities and around 196 million infections so far. On day 7 of the Tokyo Olympics, China lead the standings with 17 gold medals, followed by Japan at 15 and the United States with 14. The U.S. led the overall tally with 41 medals, while China trailed with 33. Medals are up for grabs today in swimming, rowing, shooting, cycling, and gymnastics. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. The United States and Pakistan have discussed the need for a negotiated political settlement and reduction of violence in Afghanistan. Pakistan's National Security Advisor MOEED YUSUF met his American counterpart Jake Sullivan in Washington. In a tweet, Sullivan said they consulted on regional connectivity and other areas of cooperation. Meanwhile, YUSUF said the two sides agreed to sustain the momentum in bilateral ties. He said they took stock of progress made since the Geneva meeting and discussed bilateral and regional issues. Beijing has warned the United Kingdom not to carry out any improper acts as its carrier strike groups enters the South China Sea. State-linked media said the People's Liberation Army Navy is at a high state of combat readiness. The carrier group, led by the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth, is en route to Japan. Earlier, China said it is closely monitoring the group's progress and accused London of still living in colonial days. Britain has announced a so-called freedom of navigation exercise through the South China Sea. Washington and London have challenged Beijing's claims to sovereignty in the area by purposely sailing through it. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli troops have killed a Palestinian man in clashes that erupted during the funeral of a 12-year-old boy shot dead a day earlier. The Palestinian Health Ministry said 20-year-old Shaukat Awad was hit in the head and abdomen. The ministry said another 12 protesters were wounded after Israeli troops opened fire. It said occupation forces also fired tear gas or rubber-coated bullets and stun grenades at funeral attendees. Mohammed al-Almi was shot dead by Israeli soldiers while traveling in a car with his father in the town of Beit Omar. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte has restored a key military pact with the United States more than a year after moving to terminate it. The Visiting Forces Agreement provides rules for the rotation of U.S. troops in and out of the Philippines for war drills. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced the decision in a joint presser with his counterpart Declan Lorenza in Manila. Austin said the decision provides the United States certainly in its role in counterinsurgency efforts in the Southeast Asian country. Lorenza said the Philippines-U.S. alliance will remain vital to the security, stability, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific. In a statement, Duterte's spokesperson said that the decision is aimed at upholding the country's strategic interests. The United States Congress has approved emergency funding for Capitol security and the Afghan refugees. The $2.1 billion bill was passed by a vote of 416 to 11. The bill now goes to President Joe Biden for his signature and includes almost $1 billion for security forces and police under strain after the 6 January attack. Meanwhile, over $1 billion are for the Special Immigrant Visa Program to assist Afghan interpreters. The funding includes humanitarian aid for the inevitable flood of Afghans fleeing to neighboring countries. It comes as the first group of 2,500 Afghan interpreters and their families is due to arrive in the United States. In Malta, a public inquiry into the murder of an investigative journalist, CARUANA GALIZIA, has found the state responsible for her death. GALIZIA was killed in a massive explosion as she drove out of her home on the 16th of October in 2017. The inquiry was conducted by one serving judge and 2 retired judges. It found that a culture of impunity was created by the highest ranks within the government of the time. The report said the state failed to recognize the risks to Gazila's life and to take reasonable steps to avoid them. Prosecutors believe top businessman Jorgen French masterminded the murder. French is awaiting trial for the association to murder but denies all responsibility. Called a one-woman WikiLeaks, Gazila uncovered networks of corruption in the country and abroad. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Pakistan, the coronavirus has claimed another 86 lives overnight, its highest number since the 2nd of June. The health ministry says the death toll is approaching 23,300 as the 4th wave worsens. The ministry registered more than 4,500 cases overnight as the positivity rate shot to 7.7%. The caseload has exceeded 1,024,000, while nearly 939,000 people have recovered. The ministry says there are over 62,000 active cases, of which more than 3,100 are in critical condition. Meanwhile, the government has decided to open all educational institutions starting the 2nd of August. Medics and students have expressed serious reservation and oppose this decision. For more on this, we are joined by Dr. Samin Altaf, speaking to us from Islamabad. Now, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Altaf, Pakistan are on an exponential rise in the number of cases, and the Indian Delta variant is seen as the main cause. What is different about this Indian Delta variant that makes it so dangerous?
It is dangerous because it directly infects the lungs. It directly goes to the lungs and patient gets lung infection. The previous variant affects the throat, and so it is more serious than previous one, the Delta one.
Dr. Altaf, do you believe that Prime Minister Imran Khan's government has taken the right decision by opening all education institutions across the country in the middle of a dangerous 4th wave with the Delta variant?
It should be delayed. There should be no opening of the schools because these kids, they will act as carriers and they will bring infection to homes. So the other prestigious institutions have postponed their exams due to Delta variant spike. And in previous last year, when the school was opened, there was a spike. So there is danger that there will be spike in the Delta variant when the schools are opened. So there should be I think decision should be revised not to open the school.
Dr. Altaf, according to you, what could be the consequences of the government's decision?
So there will be more cases of corona, and they are serious, but we don't talk about the other equation. We should also educate our people to boost their immune system. And immune system is boosted by increasing physical activity and taking green leafy vegetables, eating plant-based diet. So the social distancing and staying at home is important. The most important is engaging in healthy physical activity, daily walk, going to gym, and taking raw vegetables as a salad to immune boost system, so that even it is research says that if you take plant-based diet, even you get the infection, it is mild and you recover rapidly. There is fast recovery from corona.
Dr. Samin Altaf, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. We are also joined by Amar Imran, Vice President of the All Pakistan Student Mahaz, speaking to us from Lahore. Thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, your body has been representing the students, especially in regards to challenges posed by COVID-19. How do these students see this decision by the government to open all the institutions in the middle of a surge in cases?
So, hello everyone. So, you can say that we represent the students, and we have been trying to convince the government demonstration, and we are trying to convince the government that they are endangering the lives of students by opening the school at this stage of point. And this is very dangerous. We all know that how dangerous the Delta variant is. And now that the Delta variant is present in multiple locations in Pakistan, so opening the school at this stage is very dangerous. So it can be trigger as widespread of this virus, and not the students, it will also endanger the lives of their family and their parents. When they go to schools, they have met the different peoples, so the coronavirus is automatically spread.
Right. Mr. Imran, do you believe that the government has handled these students' issues well during the pandemic?
So PTI government has been very innovative about regarding opening the schools, and they have opened and closed the schools multiple times because they have not failed to figure out the effective mechanism and effective way of running the education sector in the coronavirus, that the government needs to come up with a proper plan which will put the lives of students and future of Pakistan students in danger in such a way. The students have been pressurized by the government.
So, Amar, what exactly do the students demand from the government?
The students demand they demand that they will be consulted by the government officials, and they should be consulted that what can they do, because we are representing from all the Pakistan, and we want us to consult that government consult us.
Mr. Imran, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, Brazil has reported more than 1,300 deaths from COVID-19 for a third day in a row. The Latin American country also recorded over 42,000 new cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, there are over 4.1 million fatalities and around 196 million infections so far. More in this report. Governments around the world are racing against time to head off a surge in coronavirus cases driven by the Delta variant. The World Health Organization has warned that the highly transmissible strain could unleash a fourth wave in the eastern Mediterranean zone, an area stretching from Morocco to Pakistan. In the United States, President Joe Biden stepped up efforts to stem an American tragedy fueled by the Delta variant and lagging vaccination rates. He announced that all federal workers are required either to furnish proof of vaccination or submit to a series of safety protocols.
And I hope all Americans who live in areas with substantial or high case rates will follow the mask guidance that's being laid down by the CDC. I certainly will, and I have, because this is one of those areas in Washington. And at my decision, in my direction, all federal personnel and visitors to federal buildings will have to do the same thing.
In the latest spat over COVID-19 origins, China has accused the United States of being guilty of 3 sins. Beijing said Washington is allowing the untracked spread of the virus, hiding the truth about it, and seeking origin tracing terrorism. The United Kingdom has warned that half of the coup-wrecked Myanmar's population could become infected within the next 2 weeks.
The coup has resulted in a near total collapse of the healthcare system, and healthcare workers are being attacked and arrested. The virus is spreading through the population very fast indeed. By some estimates, in the next 2 weeks, half of the population of Myanmar could be infected with COVID.
While the Philippines is imposing lockdown measures in the capital, Manila, to contain the spread of the Delta variant. In Japan, the government is extending a state of emergency to Tokyo as cases surge in a week into the pandemic-postponed Olympics. In the United States, 2 tornadoes ripped through eastern Pennsylvania, injuring several people and leaving a trail of destruction. The country is witnessing severe weather, causing wildfires, floods, droughts, and tornado. This report has the details. Heat waves, floods, wildfires. It has been a destructive summer so far in the United States, and forecasts for droughts, fires, and hurricanes are looking downright bleak. The warm and humid air has also caused a lot of tornadoes recently, the latest in Pennsylvania. In Buck County, twisters collapsed the roof of a car dealership, resulting in at least 5 injuries. Officials say there is a lot of structural damage in the area.
The Faulkner area just looked like a TV show. It just looked like a bomb went off. I mean, it's gone. Water flowing. You could smell gas until PICO was able to get out there and shut things and secure things. You know, I've been doing this for 34 years. I never saw that kind of devastation.
There has been about 2 degrees Fahrenheit of warming so far worldwide. Experts say the numbers sound small, but it is enough to profoundly shift the statistics of extreme heat events. Nearly a quarter of the United States population is facing heat waves or advisories, as sweltering temperatures stretch in a band of misery that includes parts of 20 states from Washington to Florida. The raging Dixie Fire has burned through swaths of Northern California. The blaze has consumed more than 221,000 acres, and only 23% has been contained. In neighboring Oregon, the Bootleg Fire is estimated at over 413,000 acres and 53% containment. Evacuations to safer places continue.
I don't want everything to burn up, and it makes me sick because the entire forest is burning now. The places I take my grandkids fishing is probably gone. It takes forever for things to come back.
Earlier, a cloud of dust moved towards the Phoenix suburb as weather agencies warned of a drop in visibility to 1 mile or less. In China, the world's highest bungee jump is open to visitors in Hunan province. Thrill seekers can leap into the abyss from a glass-bottom suspension bridge. More in this report. Straddled between 2 cliffs in China's Hunan province, a 430-meter glass-bottom suspension bridge offers the world's highest bungee jump from a footbridge.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Visitors to the Zhangjiajie Grand Canyon Glass Bridge can leap a height of 260 meters, a stomach-churning way to take in the views of the surrounding Wuling Yuan Wilderness, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The area, a popular international tourist attraction, is famous for its quartzite sandstone pillars and peaks extending into the clouds, along with deep ravines and gorges.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
This bridge is amazingly safe. I mean, I've worked on a lot of bridges and cantilever arms and towers, and this is an amazing design. I love it because the suspension bridge reminds me of the bridge I started off back in New Zealand in the late 80s, the CARUANA. No, it's beautiful. And the height makes it actually even more intriguing. It's one of the highest bungees in the world.
The bungee jumping operation opened at the end of 2020, delayed by the restrictions imposed by the Chinese government because of the coronavirus pandemic. To compensate for the lack of foreign tourists, the cost of a jump has been cut by around 40% to RMB 1998, roughly $306 US.
It's been great since we've opened up. The numbers have increased daily. We're looking forward to this July-August period to hopefully the numbers come up even more. We're probably averaging 20 jumps a day at the moment, which is pretty good for a jump of the size.
The pedestrian bridge was designed by Israeli architect Haim Dotan and opened in August 2016. It was once the longest glass-bottom suspension bridge in the world. The U.S. economy grew at an annual rate of 6.4% in the second quarter. It rebounded less than forecast, but still got back to pre-COVID-19 levels. The Commerce Department reported that the U.S. economy climbed to $19.4 trillion. The data showed that inflation is spiking as demand returns from its depressed levels a year ago. The pandemic caused a sharp downturn in the country's last year, with the economy shrinking 3.5%. Massive government spending as well as vaccinations are expected to propel the country out of its slump. The International Monetary Fund predicts growth to increase up to 7% this year. Asian shares are trading mostly lower despite a positive lead from Wall Street. A resurgence in COVID-19 cases in mainland China also dented the risk of appetite of the investors. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index tumbled more than 2%. Japan's Nikkei 225 fell close to 2%. Seoul's Kospi also gave up more than 1%. The Shanghai Composite Index in mainland China dropped more than 0.5%. Over in Australia, ASX 200 edged close to 0.5% lower. On day 7 of the Tokyo Olympics, China lead the standings with 17 gold medals, followed by Japan at 15 and the United States with 14. The United States led the overall tally with 41 medals, while China trailed with 36. China took gold and silver in the women's trampoline gymnastics, with Zhu Zhiying beating Lu Lingling for the top prize. 8th-ranked Japan has guaranteed medal in the men's team EP fencing event, beating South Korea in the semifinals. South Korea's Kim Min-jung won the silver in the women's 25-meter pistol shooting after a close contest with gold Russian medalist Vatalina Barasarkin. It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.